you. I mean, I want to appreciate folks' participation in the breakout rooms. I'm excited to get back on the Padlet links and like check out what people wrote collectively. So we're CURYJ. We're going to talk about our process with the everyday peace indicators and some indicators that came out of that work. So just, we introduced ourselves earlier, but I'll just like repeat. Rayvon Jones, program manager at CURYJ. And I found my way to CURYJ, from education, but also a deep connection to the way that the prison industrial complex has impacted my family's life and my life. So that's me. I'll pass to Alex.
Yeah, for sure. I guess for me, it was just, being impacted myself, being in and out of institutions since I was 13 up until I turned 21 and served a prison sentence. I got connected with communities. I met a bunch of people along the way. I got reconnected with education, and coming out of college, just opened up a lot of lights for me. Seeing a lot of my folks and my people that I still have a lot of love for, kind of still stuck, and trying to figure out how do I get them unstuck. How do we kind of move this forward? So that's my real reason for being here and joining the CURYJ team. So Chief, you want to go next?
Yes, my passion is the young people and shifting and changing narratives about how we look at young people, how we treat young people. And I believe that CURYJ has helped me shift my narrative of healing, that healing is not just ripping and running that 9-to-5 culture, but also honoring yourself, your story, and giving yourself a break. So that's just like my 2 cents. I don't want to take hella long. Check.
Beautiful. So, these are some guiding questions for us, and these are things that we want you to hold, and we're going to continue coming back to in these sessions. But first, like, what is safety? And like, how do we know what safety looks like? What you may have noticed through your conversation is people's definitions of safety may be different. So like, how do we actually know? How do we measure this? And how do we know what the lack of safety looks like? And then, last question that's going to really carry us as we're talking, through this presentation is, how do we pay attention to how equity and like understandings of equity manifest when we're discussing safety? And this came up in my group already. A lot of times people equate being rich in a rich neighborhood with safety, right? So like, there's a lot of problems with that. There's white supremacy under that, and many other things that we'll continue to have conversations about. I'll pass it to you, Alex, for the slide.
Yeah, absolutely. So these are some of the ways that we look at safety indicators, and then the big importance and like the big overarching theme when we were thinking about these things, and we were, Naomi and everybody was thinking about the fruition of them. But really, it was, it's the metrics that we have and the things that we've historically seen have been very, very large in the grand scheme of things, typically, and things that we've seen like crime statistics and data like that. That might just break down certain things, but they miss a whole lot of information. And sometimes they skip a lot of things that, might label this community as bad, but that could be something that the community holds near and dear to themselves, right? Like, loud parties, things like that, where it's not, that's just how the community functions in that area, but it's not tied into anything particularly violent. So also there's like many people in lower socioeconomic communities do not trust peace officers versus crime rates, so some of those things as well, like, how do we have those interactions between some people who might view, their individualism and their luxury goods? How do you protect them versus someone who doesn't have a lot, having constant police and contact? And it's like, so I think there's like colliding ideas and a lot of colliding stuff that come. And then it also helps us get in the mind of the community members, and really it helps us uplift their voice. And it really helps us see their angle and their perspectives. Particularly, Oakland has a large population of different people from a lot of different ethnic backgrounds. So again, some people might see, loud music or like, parties or whatever it might be, or groups of people hanging around outside as something bad. But, to a lot of community members who have been there and who actually have connection and are connected, they might see that as like, hey, my kids can go outside and play with each other. And that's their form of childcare and helping the community out. Another one is, access to food stamps and just other resources for people that don't maybe speak English or speak a language tongue that might not be large and or might not be popular, and it might just not be publicized. So, just these type of things, and how do we get support, and how do we help our communities, and how do we extend the resources to the people that might need them the most? Yeah. And then Sochi, I'll pass it to you.
Yeah, some safety indicators that came up in our community, in the presence of safety, specifically one is just like Alex mentioned, block parties and town nights bring the neighborhood together. So I really want to talk about this one because CURYJ actually partnered up with the city, and we decided to do block parties, and different organizations were part of these efforts, but specifically for CURYJ, we focus in the Fruitville district. So we chose the park. We asked departments to support, donate, and especially for a town nights for it was last year for Thanksgiving and for Christmas, where we had toy drives. We had people just donating. I had the fire department donate some toys, like, and just showing that community, like, we don't have to um, think about policy when we just think about people and humanizing them and just offering them a token of love that will eventually trickle down to each community member saying, hey, you got a toy too, man? I got a toy. You feel good? Yeah, I'm feeling good. You feel, yeah, your kid feeling good? Yeah, we all feeling good. We chilling. I know you, hey, so it's very, a really good way to have neighbors know each other. And then also the crime rates that day went down. So we don't have to incarcerate people for crime rates to go down. We just need to host block parties so people can actually be aware of the conditions of their community, but also a smile can also bring um, healthier relationships with the neighbors. And other folks said the community holds gatherings and events that bring out the kids and the adults, like karaoke. You see elders outside on their porch, community members parent each other's kids, and kids stay out and play until the street lights come on. So those are some things that came up in our group as well, that street lights was an indicator that it's safe to walk at night and walk your dog and stuff like that.
Mhm. Thank you, Sochi. And like, before we talk about the absence of safety, and you're going to see like a longer list for that one, just want to name, like, this is a process that folks in CURYJ went through with the everyday peace indicators. And this is like in their words, like what safety looks like to them. And similarly with the absence of safety, I'll like read the first few and then I'll pass to Alex to read the others. And some of these we may like elaborate on a little bit. But when asked like what the absence of safety looked like, we got things like people walk quickly, looking around them, holding their bags tight. You have to worry about whether you're wearing red or blue. You see police cars driving by a lot. Kids can't go to the park in their own neighborhoods. New people move into the neighborhood and complain about and even call the cops on long-term residents. And then I'll pass to you, Alex, with others.
Yeah, so some of the other ones that we saw during town nights with some of our young people and even community folks were, income requirements on food stamps. Some people had family members who they couldn't report on their food stamps, or they couldn't do it for legal reasons, and that reduces the amount of food that they could buy to feed their entire family. You feel like anything can happen anywhere, even like Merritt. The areas in the parks that are supposed to be safe, it's just unpredictable. They're shooting, so people don't inhabit them. People don't go to them because there's a lack of sense of community. And like Sochi said, town nights and things like these community events really do help to transform communities from a lot of segregation between another to unity. There's blood stains in the concrete. If you make eye contact, people think you have a problem. You can name a lot of people who have been killed by the police. So these are a lot of the indicators that a lot of our young people have said that leads to an absence of safety. And then, so moving forward a little bit, Rayvon, if you can go to the next slide. One of the big ones that I really wanted to talk about was the example of crime statistics and the implications that they have on the communities of color. So on the left side, these are the gang injunctions that the city of Oakland put on different communities. So North Oakland, you can see North Oakland, the Fruitvale, East Oakland, different parts of different neighborhoods. And pretty much what ended up happening is, me personally, I had a lot of family members and a lot of friends who grew up in some of these areas. And pretty much what it ended up saying was that, hey, these areas have very, very high crime rates. And based on these crime rates, we need to get rid of the people creating the crime. Or it was labeled as, hey, it's these subset of groups or subset of people. So what they ended up doing was creating gang injunctions. And these gang injunctions pretty much said that any person between the ages of, let's say 14 to 18, or people that are going to high school in these areas can't wear certain colors. You can't wear red, you can't wear blue, and you can't wear black, right? So what that ended up doing was that a lot of people who wouldn't necessarily been involved in anything. There's been instances where people might have, I heard of someone in the San Francisco district where this also happened as well, wore a red hair tie and they got thrown on a gang list, and they literally had to walk around with a card that said, "Hey, I'm a registered gang member," just for wearing a red hair tie to school. So this automatically created disconnect between one another already. You go to jail and the people are like, "Hey, you were in this area wearing these things, so you're automatically associated with them." So once you hit the jail system, they're like, "Hey, you have to program and you have to go over there with those people." So it started dividing people who weren't even necessarily gang affiliated gang members, and it started dividing communities up very, very much. You saw a spike in crime rates, you saw a spike in shootings, you saw a spike of just in general of incarceration, and it did nothing really to stop crime rates. So that's why the city ended up getting rid of them. But it was through the voice and through these other people who decided to speak up and say, "Hey, you're criminalizing people who have nothing to do with some of these things. You're using indicators of saying that these areas of high crime, let's just get all the young people and all the people that look like they pertain or they belong to some subset of group and get them off the street." And that's really what we wanted to get with these indicators. Is there's a lot of different ways to see and view things, and sometimes these policies that certain governmental agencies or just certain policymakers have can be very flawed and can be very, very harmful to certain communities. And I'll give one final example of this. I actually grew up in Berkeley. So if I were to walk around, let's say with my older brother and another person, and we were all to have a shirt that said like UC Berkeley, like I'm wearing now, we would actually be stopped and we would be detained, we'd be searched, we'd be harassed. Whereas 5 blocks, 10 blocks up the street, you could see 3 white kids walking with Berkeley hoodies and absolutely nothing would happen to them, no stopping them, no checking them, no nothing. So this is kind of like ways that you can see like some of these injunctions or some of these discriminatory policies come into play and kind of say, "Hey, your group's being criminalized." So these are just some examples of how this can happen. Rayvon, if you want to go to the next slide.
Yes.
Yeah, and then these are just some more, just examples of physical environments. So, visible neighborhood norms. So these are some of the things that people say, signs of expected behaviors, of interactions with physical environment. Parents can't let their kids out to play. These are also like, everything in the indicators is broken down to different components. So it'll be broken down to infrastructure, what's lacking in the neighborhood. It could also be education. So education references to the education system. So these have to do a lot with just overall, they're bucketed into like, what are young people saying that's missing in education, right? People aren't showing up to school. Why? Because they can't relate to teachers. They can't relate to the people that are being hired. They're not interested in the curriculum because it doesn't speak about them. It speaks about like white imperialism or colonialism that happened, and they just don't relate. So people end up leaving school, or they just say, "I'm not interested." So I think these are other things that we, just in the educational sector and just the ways that all these different things can wrap around and have big implications on neighborhoods. Yeah, Rayvon, if you want to go to the next slide, please.
Yes.
So I think this is like Naomi a little bit more what she did, but traditional. So these are pretty much what I've been saying, but these are the highlights. In traditional indicators, they really don't tell the full story. They miss a lot of details. They miss a ton of facts. And sometimes they don't measure, they don't correctly measure policies that can be broken down equally and distributed equally among the people that they're trying to serve. And they don't really speak to the people that might necessarily not have a voice, but need them desperately. Food stamps is a big example that I heard a lot from our young people in the East Oakland, Fruitvale area. And they don't tap into any expertise from the community in terms of what they believe is safety and what they believe isn't safe. Rayvon, if you can go to the next slide. Yeah, and then I think this is just, the way that we look at public safety and the way that we maybe sometimes we frame it, the way that we say, "Hey, this is what safety is. It's police officers," or it's having more stop signs, having more like checkpoints or whatever it might be, or creating like some policies that, check people and say you can't do these things and you can't associate with this and force them to not. These can very well, criminalize people and actually be doing the exact opposite of what they should be doing. So, creating actual frameworks that we can look at and we can say, "Hey, this community, it's different from it's not just the crime statistics there. There's more to that. There's an underlying problem from that. And that could be the income level. It could be the disparities. It could be the educational, the lack of resources. So I think really understanding these frameworks and looking at it. So yeah, it's kind of, it's kind of like what the big overarching theme of all of this is, and, really what I wanted to get to. And I want to leave space for Colin to go ahead and do some updates. So I'll stop here. But yeah, thank you all for listening. Colin, the floor is yours.